Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your number one source for free fantasy basketball tools that will help you win your league. Could not recommend #basketball's fantasy basketball tools enough, including Mark Roberts' projections and a very important weekly article written by our own Tyler P. Watts, who is joining us right now. Tyler, what's going on?
Well, it's just another week of fantasy basketball in the books, which means another week is about to begin.
It's a never ending saga, and we're almost like, it's really weird. This season feels like it's been going on forever. We are only in week 8, and I think I say this every week. It feels like the season has been going on for a very long time. We don't know a ton. We're obviously in a period where, hot streaks have kind of tapered off and cold streaks have picked up, and players are kind of playing where we think they're going to go. So we have a better feel for guys who are actually breaking out, guys who are, maybe taking a small step back. We always talk about that 40 to 70 range, that first plateau of players. And some of those guys who used to be in the 40s, they're in the 60s. And some of those guys who are in the 70s are in the 40s. So we're starting to get a really good feel for what players are relevant and what players aren't. But it's only week 8, is only the first week of December. We have all of December. We have all of January. We have all of February. And things drastically change. And actually, that is why we are going to be doing I screwed up, so I need a second start on my fantasy basketball league mid-season draft. Tyler, this is your brainchild, and I love it. And our Patreon subscribers, anyone who is subscribed to patreon.com/watchingtheboxes and is subscribed at the level to join a league, you will be eligible to join that league. So if you're interested in joining a mid-season league, go to patreon.com/watchingtheboxes and subscribe, just like all our awesome Patreon subscribers have already done so. But Tyler, when do you think we're going to get this league going here? I know it's not midway through the season, but we're getting close.
So we just passed the quarter poll, meaning there's more than a quarter of the games in the books as we speak right now. And so over the next couple of weeks, we're probably looking at a slow draft for this, just because we got listeners kind of all over the map, and it gets really hard.
We got our boys in Iceland. Shout out to our Iceland listeners. Respect.
That's what I mean. It gets hard to kind of do a draft, so we're probably going to look at a slow draft starting here somewhere in the middle of December. So if you guys really want to get in this league, I would suggest signing up ASAP so we can get started and we can get the thing rolling. We're looking, probably if we wait 2 more weeks, we're going to be over a third of the season already gone. So that'd be about perfect time to start, I think.
Yeah, I think 2/3 left with the season. Maybe it's a roto league. I always keep pushing for those roto leagues. Nobody ever listens to me, but whatever. The format will be determined by the players. And if you are a new subscriber to patreon.com/watchingtheboxes, you will get first dibs into that mid-season listener league. I'm excited. First off, I'm not doing very well this year in about half my leagues. It's an off year for me. I've got a lot going on. I switched jobs. I moved to a new apartment, a new location. So I'm going to blame those things. But in reality, I need to be blaming myself for slacking off in some of these leagues. And no longer will I be doing that, Tyler. I'm coming for you. Is my goal.
You're pulling a Houston Rockets, just having a bad start, and then you're going to be right back in the playoff hunt. So
I'm going to draft I'm going to call Carmelo Anthony and see if he can join my fantasy basketball team.
So what's crazy about the Western Conference is literally the Jazz are in 14th in the West as we speak right now.
And is that true?
Yes. Would you like me to read you the teams not in the playoffs? Oh, wait. Yes. Let's guess. Guess, Mike. This will be fun. This will be a fun game.
I know Houston is struggling.
Houston is 500, so they are a half a game out of the playoffs. That's one. You nailed it.
Sacramento is in the playoffs right now, I think.
No, Sacramento 500, also half a game out of the
really
playoffs.
Close. I think they were in the playoffs, and not last time I looked at the standings, which was like a week ago or so.
Well, the Mavericks finished the last game of the night, and they were 500 going into that game, and they beat the Clippers. So they are the 8th seed at 11-10.
They're the 8th seed at 11-10. Okay, let me try to figure out
So
if I can figure this out. I know obviously Phoenix is not in, and I think the Timberwolves with their weird start aren't in, but I can't. The rest of the teams I think are in the top 8, and there's more than 8 teams, so I have no. I would actually say Dallas is not in the playoffs.
I just said Dallas was the last seed.
Oh, they're the last seed. I thought you said the Pelicans.
The Pelicans are 500. The Rockets are 500. The Kings are 500. The Spurs and those are the 3 teams that are not in.
Right,
the next 3 not in. The Spurs and the Timberwolves are both 1 game under 500. The Jazz are 2 games under 500, and the Phoenix Suns are 4-19.
This is a bloodbath out here. There is the second to last team
is 5 games behind the top
5
seed.
games out.
How crazy is that?
Of the Nuggets and Clippers, who are the number 1 seed in the West. What the fuck is going on? And so everyone's like, oh, the Western Conference is all locked up, and the Eastern Conference is going to be the most interesting. And once again, the Western Conference goes and outdoes itself. All these teams are better, and it's a bloodbath out there. And the Western Conference, once again, easily the most interesting conference, because it is a borderline tank show. See, Tyler, I'm not versed in the West Coast. I know you follow the Dallas Mavericks. You're on the West Coast, or you're not on the West Coast, but you follow the Western Conference. I follow the Eastern Conference because I'm only interested in the tankathon between the Bulls, the Cavs, the Hawks, and the Knicks. That's all I'm interested in this season when it comes to the standings. And for some reason, the Bulls really still trying to win games. Lauri Markkanen back. We need to talk about that. But only 5 wins. So it's been a good season. They've almost won quite a few games, but end up losing in the last minute, and that's awesome.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see how this new lottery shakes things up. Obviously, you got to look at those 3 teams and then the Suns. I mean, the Suns only have 4 wins, and we're going to talk about Devin Booker here in a little bit, probably. Yeah, I mean, that's a scary race to the bottom. But what thing is, like, all of them are going to get the same odds anyways with the new lottery. So I would say it really doesn't matter. Like, those are kind of the worst teams, and they're all going to have that shot to get the top pick, and it'll be interesting to see who's the lucky one, I guess.
I hope there's a Patrick Ewing-esque slam of the card into the side of the box. So, but the Chicago Bulls are on that card instead of the New York Knicks, just like that. I mean, go watch that YouTube if it's still out there, unless David Stern had it taken down.
No, it's there, because last year for the not last year, 2 years ago for the draft, I wrote a thing about conspiracy theories.
I loved that article. That was one of my favorite articles, Tyler. Your conspiracy theory draft article.
Yeah, and it had a bunch of them all the way back. I think that was one of the first ones, and then there was a bunch of them. It had like the LeBron one was in there, and I think there was 5 or 6 in the article. It was real fun to research. And
I don't think Cleveland should get a number 1. I think if you have the number 1 pick, that many times in that shorter period of time, there actually should be like a rule where you are unable to get it. So like, even if you get the lottery, you have to move down, and whoever got second ends up getting first, and you have to move down to second because you blew it. You don't, if you get that many number 1 picks and you can't figure out how to build a team around that, you don't deserve another number 1 pick just to ruin that person's career. I also want to see the city of Cleveland just burn to the ground now and never be relevant in the NBA for the rest of my life. That would be ideal.
Well, and we could talk about that if you want, but that team is not looking good in the sense that, I mean, what even like role players do they have on a contending team?
Well, I mean, we can talk about the trade of Kyle Korver back to one of the great states for white 3-point shooters, back to Utah. And a lot of people were kind of out there saying, hey, is this a big deal? Is this a fantasy relevant move? And it's like, if Kyle Korver wasn't fantasy relevant on a team that's bad, why would you think Kyle Korver is relevant on a team that is good?
I will say there's certain nights, and there have been for the last a lot of years, where I will stream Kyle Korver in. Usually it's when there's an injury and I need some 3-pointers late in my matchup, and I'm like, you know what? I could see Kyle Korver coming in, banking home like 5, 6 3-pointers in 20 or 25 minutes. So I guess in that sense he's fantasy relevant, but in like I'm gonna pick Kyle Korver up and own him sense, definitely not.
Yeah, it was actually probably a pretty good trade for Utah. They do have the ability to utilize him, and Kyle Korver is ageless. He's going to be 38 this year, and he's still like NBA relevant, which is pretty shocking, I would say. But you're right, streaming at best, but that's still super impressive that he's streaming relevant at the age of 38 years old. Not enough props goes to Kyle Korver, who's had a incredible career, but not standard league ownable, in my opinion. Let's talk about the return of one of my favorite players of all time, Lauri Markkanen, the legend. He is back. He is coming off the bench. I don't expect that to last very long in Chicago. He played 25 minutes in a embarrassing. I mean, they're all embarrassing pretty much, but this one felt especially bad. A blowout loss against Houston. 10 points, couple 3-pointers, couple rebounds, a steal and a block. His shot wasn't there. Nothing, in my opinion, nothing to worry about here. Lauri Markkanen is the future of the Bulls. Him playing with Wendell Carter Jr. And getting as much time with Wendell Carter Jr. this season is probably the number one priority for the alleged brain trust of Garpax. That and keeping their job, I think actually that's the number one priority, is not getting fired by the end of the year, and then having Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter Jr. play together as much as humanly possible. And also, I really, really hope that the priority above both of those things is not re-signing Jabari Parker, who has turned it on offensively finally, but is the worst defensive player in the entire league and maybe in the history of the league.
Good tank move by the Bulls.
Smart decision if you look at it. If you think they're playing three-dimensional chess, which I do not, because Gar Forman is elderly and goes to bed before most of these games even start, it is a genius move, but I do not think that's what they were going for.
So honestly, for your Bulls, I'm not sure this is the draft to have the number one pick, in the sense that, I mean, I'm just not seeing a great fit between Wendell Carter Jr., Lauri Markkanen, and any of those guys at the top. I mean, obviously, like, it's great to have a transcendent player, but like, if the pick's going to be Zion Williamson, like, that's not going to be a good defensive team. Just
no,
not. Just not.
I mean, you could always say that Zion could improve defensively in the future. He is a freak of nature, and that is super interesting when it comes to just having a freak of nature. But hey, the number one pick's an asset, and the Bulls do not trade well, but the Bulls do make very good picks in the draft. And they're definitely above average team, probably in the top, I would say top 10 in drafting over the last couple decades. And that's the only thing I give Gar Forman props to, is finding pretty good picks in the draft. But the Lauri Markkanen return for fantasy owners, a solid hold, a buy if you think you can get Lauri Markkanen from the guy who's owned him for this long. I really doubt if he's owned him for this long, I don't think you're going to get Lauri Markkanen for a discount, because I'm pretty sure that person is just waiting for Lauri Markkanen to be a important part of their roster. But you never know. Like, one game back doesn't look that good, gets a little nervous. It could be a buy low situation, but Lauri Markkanen's super safe moving forward into the future.
Yeah, no worries about that. And I mean, obviously they played him a ton as a rookie, so once he gets up to speed a little bit, I wouldn't be worried about anything as far as Markkanen goes.
Yeah, definitely not. Bad news, though, on instead of a return from an injury, not a great injury for Devin Booker. Looks like I think it's a hamstring leg injury, but it feels like it's been lingering, and he's been sitting out weird. Like, he sat out a weird game the other night, and it didn't make too much sense. And then he left the Lakers game, and it feels like this is this lingering injury through this year, and I don't know what to make of it right now. But Tyler, you seem to have the insight when it comes to some of these injuries. You've done a lot of deep dives into like the history of NBA injuries. So like Devin Booker moving forward rest of the season, what do you think his value is? What should owners of Devin Booker do?
So, I mean, it's a hamstring, which is never good. This is the second hamstring injury he's had. He missed the game this week with a toe injury. That's what they were classifying it as. He had a hamstring.
They said, right?
He had a hamstring injury a little bit earlier this season that cost him a few games. So Igor Kokoshkov, who's the coach of the Suns, said he didn't have an update on how long Booker would be out. But, I mean, a second hamstring injury, you got to think that they're going to sit him for at least a few games. And the bad part about hamstring injuries is a lot of them can be like a month, because a lot of people feel really good when they have a hamstring. Like, they start feeling good once the injury starts healing up, and then they go, and the second they hit like their maximum effort, they strain their hamstring again. So teams a lot of times are very cautious with hamstring injuries, and that's not good for Devin Booker, obviously. It's a shame, too, because we were seeing Devin Booker have, I don't want to say a breakout season, but a new kind of a rebirth with averaging 7 assists a game for the first time ever, and Devin Booker was looking great. So definitely not good news. It's undetermined how long he'll be out. I would guess if I'm in a weekly league, I would probably safely sit Devin Booker at least this week. I doubt he plays at all this week. And we could be looking at somewhere in the month range for him to be out.
I think that's a pretty good call. That if you are in a weekly league, it's probably pretty safe to sit him. Definitely taking a step forward when it comes to rounding your game. You know, when you're a 20-point scorer already at that age, it's hard to like improve pieces of your game. And you can tell that Devin Booker had been working on improving his distribution. His assists were up. And it's just sad. Like, you don't want someone who could be legitimately a all-star in the NBA to struggle with injuries and keep him from reaching his potential, no matter what team you root for, even though the Phoenix Suns are a hot mess and they've been under the radar, at least for the casual NBA fan, one of the worst run franchises in the entire league. Probably you could even I think you can make an argument that they've been ran worse than the Kings, though that is going to be a difficult argument. I think you can actually get there if you harp on the right things. So I do feel bad for those fans in Phoenix. Devin Booker, if you own him, Tyler, would you think about just trading high at this point if you're in a redraft league?
I mean, yeah, obviously you're not going to want to sit him with a month if you don't really have an IR or space on your IR. So if I could trade Devin Booker for any second round player, I'd definitely do that. I don't want to trade too low, though, because at this point we don't really know how long he's going to be out. So if you're going to trade me someone like Kyle Lowry or Kemba Walker, I'll probably do that deal. But if you're going to trade me someone like Lauri Markkanen, I'm probably just going to keep Devin Booker and hope that he comes back in like a week and it's not as bad as I think it is.
Yeah, you want to stay out of that 40 to 70 plateau, which I believe Lauri Markkanen is still in at this point, especially with his slow return to the court. That'll take some time for him to get going. Stay away from that 40 to 70 plateau when it comes to someone with the talent of Devin Booker, because even if he sits out a month, and suddenly he's healthy January, February, March, you just got rid of a second round player for a guy who in shallower leagues, you could probably find a guy off the waiver wire for 3 weeks who's producing better than the guy you might have traded him for. So if you can stream hot hands that are doing almost as much as the guy you're getting back for Devin Booker, don't make that deal. But I would consider selling high on Devin Booker, certainly with this injury, as high as you can anyway, with this injury kind of looming, and not really trusting Phoenix to handle the situation terribly well. As I just don't trust the front office in Phoenix. But week 8 is going to be another interesting week. Tyler, you have written another gem of an article over on #basketball.com for the week 8 primer. Going into week 8, is this a weird schedule week? Is there something in particular we need to know right off the bat before we start talking about pickups and ads for this week?
So the schedule did me a favor in writing the article, not necessarily fantasy managers. So 8 teams that play 4 times this week. There's 2 teams that play just twice, and then the other 20 teams play 3 times. So obviously Philly and Boston, the 2 teams that play twice, and it's going to be hard to start a lot of those players, especially in standard leagues where the waiver wire is plentiful. Like, sure, you're going to probably start Kyrie Irving and Joel Embiid, Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, but a lot of those other guys, the Gordon Haywards, the Jason Tatums, you might want to play someone with 4 games just in the sense that, at maximum you're going to get 60 minutes from that player. And if you can find a guy on your waiver wire playing 30 minutes, that's 120 minutes. It's twice as much action. It's going to be worth it probably. Now, I will say this, the teams with 4 games this week don't have a lot of great streaming options. The Cavs probably have the best options. And some of the other guys that you'll see in my top 10 are not normally guys who make the top 10. So you got to kind of just look at your waiver wire and make some difficult decisions on that this week, as far as that goes.
Yeah, just throwing it out there, though, if you are in a league that allows you to make daily moves instead of locking your league weekly, which, by the way, note to self, need to lock those weekly leagues in tonight, guys. So that is incredibly important. And that's a note just for me when I'm re-listening to this and editing it. So I actually go do that this evening before my roster's lock. But the Boston Celtics do play the Knicks on a 3-game night on, I believe that is Thursday. And they play the Bulls on Saturdays. So if you can do daily moves, streaming some, even though the Celtics do not have very good streaming options, playing the Knicks and the Bulls is a good sign that you might get some slot minutes from some of those bench players who you would assume the Celtics are going to blow out both of these teams almost certainly. But
I put my first player on here that I've done in a long time where I said you should drop this player.
Wow.
For the Celtics, and that's Terry Rozier, owned 44% of leagues. And literally his best category he's producing so far this season is 3.9 rebounds per game.
Yeah, I'm surprised, and it's probably just simply Scary Terry name recognition, right? That's way too high to be owned, especially when the first player you recommend picking up is a guy who's on this list almost every single week. Cedi Osman, currently ranked 167th, playing 32 minutes a game, only owned in 31% of leagues. Why is Cedi Osman not more owned, or not? Why aren't people picking him up and keeping him on their rosters when he ends up being in your top 3 of guys you should stream almost every week at this point?
Well, I mean, the Cavs had a strange schedule where they played 4 games for 3 straight weeks, so that's a big factor in why he's there. I mentioned it though, right? He's one of those fringe borderline players. Like, he's ranked 167th on the season. Now, what's keeping people from owning him is his semi-scary, very scary field goal percentage at 36%.
That's almost Scary Terry like.
Yeah, so I mean, I get that, but when you look at his stat line across the board, like, it's pretty good, and you want a little bit more on the defensive stats, obviously. You want him to start hitting his shot a little bit more, but those are things I could see happening as Cedi Osman adjusts to being the, I don't know, number 2, number 3 option on that Cleveland team, right? Like, he's one of their better scorers, sadly. Like, I don't know if that's a good thing, but you're talking, so far this season, he's gotten you 11.4 points, 5.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 0.8 steals, 1.6 3-pointers. Like, it's a fairly decent stat line across the board for someone you're streaming in, and he's going to help you in a lot of categories. But obviously, you need him to shoot the ball a little bit better, and there's no guarantee that's going to happen, but I think eventually it will.
Yeah, I just think, with the potential there of, one, the Cavs just being absolutely miserable. This is, stats, piling up stats on a bad team, and Cedi Osman being someone who they are looking at as, maybe potentially someone who could start for a future Cavs team. They're going to let him play, and he should only just get better. Another guy on the Cavs that you actually have quite a few Cavs on this list simply because their schedule is pretty decent. Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson both making the list. If you had to choose between Jordan Clarkson and Rodney Hood this week, which one of those guys would you go with?
Jordan Clarkson not close in the sense that both of them are really only helping you in the points category, and Jordan Clarkson's getting 16 and Rodney Hood's getting 13.2. So Clarkson is kind of playing that six-man scorer off the bench where they just kind of feed him the ball and let him do his thing. And I mean, 16 points a game is nothing to sneeze at. It's probably the best guy on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues. The highest scoring player on the waiver wire. Now he's not doing a lot else, but you can get 16 points a game times 4 games. That's a lot of points for your weekly matchup.
Yeah, that can really add up when you're looking at a guy who, first off, is available in quite a few leagues, and second is just like someone who I don't think anyone significantly cares about at this point, which is really maybe strange to say with a guy who's scoring 16 points a game at this point, but still ranked right outside your standard league relevant type players. So an excellent stream choice for especially when you need points. And you cannot find points, like you said, on the waiver wire, especially 16 points a game. That's pretty hard to find. I do want to talk about one last player here on Tyler's Week 8 schedule primer on #basketball.com. And that is the mysterious and alluring return of Kevin Knox. One good game from Kevin Knox. And first off, all the Knick fanboys would be coming out of the woodwork. I don't know. First off, there's got to be a lot of woodwork because there are a lot of Knick fanboys out there. I understand population density is a direct result of how many damn fanboys the Knicks have, but they are the loudest, some of the most obnoxious fanboys out there. That's right, New York. I'm coming after you. But we have also ourselves been allured by Kevin Knox in this preseason, but Knox just has not gotten the opportunity to be the guy in New York, really not getting starters minutes, occasionally just playing like 7 to 8 minutes a game, but against the Milwaukee Bucks in a surprise win for the Knicks. And we're talking about one single game. 26 points, 5 3-pointers, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and a block for Kevin Knox. Is that a sign? Is that a flash of talent, or is that a small sample size theater?
So, and I mentioned this a little bit later in the piece. The Knicks have the absolute best schedule this week. So they play 4 times. They play 3 on the lightest schedule days, and then their last game is on Saturday, which has 9 games. But there are 2 days with 10 games, so even that day is like a somewhat better day when you're going to play 4 games. And so Knicks guys should be great pickups. And Knicks guys would have flooded that top 10 had we known who's going to play on a consistent basis. And right now, it just seems like Coach Fizdale messes with that rotation every game in the sense that, sure, like the same 5 guys start a lot, but, 1 minute Damian Dotson's getting 30 minutes, and then the next game he's getting 12. And the same thing, you mentioned it with Kevin Knox, and there's a boatload of guys, Noah Vonleh, Alonzo Trier, Mitchell Robinson. Like, no one really knows what these guys are going to play. They're all, they're owned somewhere between 40 and 7% of leagues. If you told me who was going to play, I'd probably pick them up. But there's no guarantees, and you would think that they'd be prioritizing guys like Knox and Trier and Robinson. These guys are all young. They could be parts of their future. You think they'd want to see what they have in those players, but they run out guys sometimes like Mario Hezonja, who he couldn't cut it on the Magic when they were bad. Like, is he really part of a future winning team? Probably not. So, I mean, if you can tell me their rotation, like, you let me know. Let me know when you figure it out.
I've been sitting around trying. We tried to figure it out in the preseason. We tried to figure it out when they were playing games before the season, and we tried to figure it out all the way into week 8, and it cannot be figured out. The Knicks have no idea what they're doing. This team is going to be in flux for the rest of the season. Obviously, Kristaps Porzingis at some point is probably good at comeback, but we don't even know that. So we're going to have to just keep an eye on them and always in the back of your mind, just check that Knicks box score and start keeping track of what they're actually going to be doing. Follow some Knicks beat writers on Twitter to see if they're actually ever going to settle on a rotation. I know Noah Vonleh is relevant now because of this rotation, but who knows when that ends?
Well, here's the worst part. So Fizdale will say things like, I'm sticking with this starting lineup for a while. This is my new starting lineup. Like, he'll say things like that, and then 2 games later, he'll change it. Or what he'll do is, like, in the last game, for instance, he started Mario Hezonja and played him 12 minutes. He started Enes Kanter and played him 27 minutes. And then his 3 other starters played 35, 36, and 47 minutes in the overtime game against the Bucks. He played Kevin Knox off the bench 37 minutes and Damian Dotson 33 minutes. So why did he start Hezonja and play him 12 minutes? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It makes 0 sense is what it does. It's almost a worse situation than we saw in Orlando last year. And it's infuriating because there is some potential for some fantasy relevant players on this team.
Well, at what point do you figure it out? Like, okay, we're how many games into the season now? For the Knicks, have played, 24 games already. Like, at this point, you should have it figured out. And sure, like, maybe an injury happens, maybe this happens, maybe that happens. But I just don't quite get it. And obviously, Mario Hezonja had that huge dunk on Giannis in that game. And, I mean, maybe I'm just missing something. Maybe he got ejected at some point or something. But to play a starter 12 minutes doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, I actually think Hezonja is actually a pretty fairly decent NBA player. I think with the right coaching, he could be like a Marco Bellinelli-esque type player if he wasn't trying to take over games. Like playing him that few minutes is very confusing. Granted, they won that game, but I can't make anything of it. We're just going to have to keep checking in on the Knicks every week. I don't want to check on the Knicks every week. That's the issue, because all these guys are barely fantasy relevant. So if someone like Mitchell Robinson could get 35 minutes a game, maybe those blocks would make him fantasy relevant, but he still probably is just a streamer.
Okay.
I guess you could say, Hezonja could be fantasy relevant with starters minutes. Trey Burke could be even, I know he's out and stuff, but he could be fantasy relevant playing 35 minutes. Kevin Knox even could be borderline playing 35 minutes, but no one's going to play 35 minutes on this team.
So Mitchell Robinson is in that weird range where he's blocking like 2 shots a game in like 20 minutes, but he's doing absolutely nothing else. He gets you like 3 rebounds in 20 minutes. So even in 40 minutes, he's getting you 6. Like, that's not really helping, and he's not scoring. So he's like strictly a block streamer, I think, no matter how many minutes he gets. The weird part about that Hezonja thing, so he started Hezonja in both halves, and he played Hezonja exactly 6 minutes in both halves, and then never played him again. So he started him in the first and third quarter, played him 6 minutes, and never played him again.
That makes 0 sense in any way. Any way you look at it makes 0 sense.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
It just
doesn't make it. And I mean, we see this sometimes with like when injuries happen, that someone just wants to like keep the second unit together, so they replace a guy with like the third string and they don't play that many minutes. But yeah, I don't understand playing someone for 6 minutes and to start both halves and then just be like, yeah, you're done, man. No more. Yeah,
it's very, very strange. Back-to-backs this week. The schedule is a little strange, and there's not a ton of players, especially out there, who are on, in the bottom 50% owned in leagues, who you can exploit this week, and especially exploit going into next week. Monday of next week, basically almost every team is playing. We got 11 games going, so it will be a hefty week. So doing a Sunday Monday stream into week 9 is probably not going to be good, but you do have some Tuesday streams into next week. Tuesday Thursday of this week is going to be kind of the low mark for games, so there's not a huge opportunity to to get good back-to-backs out of players on off nights for your roster. Is there any team you would want to focus on, maybe a pseudo Tuesday, Thursday back-to-back, or a Thursday, Saturday back-to-back that you like more than other teams?
Well, I mean, obviously the Tuesday, Thursday one, you got to look at the Suns now with Devin Booker out, right? Josh Jackson, Elliot Kobo, Mikal Bridges, all could be pretty interesting, especially if he's not going to play. And I would even maybe throw in Jamal Crawford, who's not listed in the article, right? Like we've seen just the other game when Devin Booker was out, like Jamal Crawford played like 25 minutes, and Jamal Crawford's been hitting his shot, which it's kind of what we see now with this version of Jamal Crawford is like he bubbles up and then he goes back into nothing and he bubbles up because he just has some hot shooting games kind of all collected together. You got to think they're going to play Jackson and Bridges more. Elliot Kobo's been playing like 30 minutes a game since they cut Isaiah Cannon. So those are all three guys that you could pick up. And
yeah, I like picking Jackson up or Kobo, but probably like long term, if there is something going on with Booker, I feel like Mikal Bridges might be the more interesting longer term hold there, because it doesn't seem like that Phoenix Suns team trusts Josh Jackson at all.
Well, and the thing is, someone's going to have to shoot. And Bridges is kind of a 3-and-D guy. Like, he's not much of a creator. So it'll be interesting to see who's shooting the shots. And that's why I kind of think Jackson will be a very inefficient chucker.
Yeah. And if you don't mind the drop in efficiency with an increased volume for Josh Jackson, then that is probably your go-to guy for your Thursday, Sunday stream, and maybe even a week-long stream.
And stop the DeAndre Ayton should be Rookie of the Year thing.
Yeah,
I hear that from Suns fans.
We're done. We're done here. Luka Doncic is the Rookie of the Year. Even if Luka Doncic didn't play any more games this year, I'd still think you have to give it to him. That's how good he is. I'm okay with saying that. We're not even sure. I'm not even sure DeAndre Ayton is the second best rookie playing right now. Just saying.
No, Jaren Jackson, way passing.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is better. Guess what? Wendell Carter Jr. is better than DeAndre Ayton. Just saying. So, Suns fans, we feel for you. We know your front office sucks. Chill out. Final thoughts, Tyler, for week 8. Is there anything you want anyone else to look into, maybe even streaming into week 9?
I mean, there's not a lot of great streamers this week, and that's unfortunate for head-to-head leagues. It's good for you if you have a really strong team, though, because the strongest team is probably going to win the week. You mentioned like week 9. We're looking into week 9 a little bit. If you're a person who thinks maybe you got an easy matchup, or you think that you pretty much can lock this one up a little bit early. Week 9 is a rather strange schedule in the sense that Tuesday and Thursday have 3 games. Monday and Wednesday have 11. Friday has 9, and both Saturday and Sunday have 7. So we get a few more games next week. We get a lot, 5 days with a good amount of games. Now you probably should be able to stream on Saturday and Sunday, but there's probably only 4 days that you're streaming next week. So that's something to look at. And it's just going to be a little bit of a strange week. So buckle up for that.
Yeah. You're just going to, hopefully you have the better team. So hopefully this isn't that big of a deal that was not having a good streaming lineup, especially even going into week 9, getting that extra game. Only a couple players, really, Spurs and Toronto, looking like they have a good matchup for your Sunday, Tuesday. If you have one pickup left late in the week, maybe get that extra game going into week 9. But this is just the luck of the draw. Some weeks are going to be really good streaming weeks. Other weeks are going to be pretty even. Sometimes you got teams playing 1 game per week, which makes absolutely no sense. And sometimes you're going to get teams that play 5. So overall, you should be maximizing your games, balancing out those streams, and basically trying to get as much wins in these categories as possible, because it's all going to add up by the time we get the playoff season coming up here, depending on when your playoffs start. So I think that's it for week 8. You you can find me, Mike Catron, at Watch the Boxes on Twitter, and you can find Tyler P. Watts, who has a fantastic weekly primer for your fantasy week on hashtagbasketball.com, along with a few other fantasy basketball articles. And if you're really into Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, Tyler P. Watts on Twitter is the guy you want to follow. He's got great analysis of the upcoming Rookie of the Year and probably perennial all-star Luka Doncic playing for a Dallas Mavericks team that has no business being in the playoffs and technically is right now, even though that West Coast is a bloodbath. If you guys like the show, please rate and review us. Hit us up on Twitter if you have feedback for the show. If you want to get in touch with us personally and have an influence on how we take the show, if you want more mailbags, you want to do question and answer times, if you want us to talk more about Dynasty and Keeper Leagues, join patreon.com. Go to patreon.com/watchingtheboxes, become a Patreon subscriber, and you'll have direct access to me and Tyler, help shape the show. And then also, most importantly, help the show stay supported in continuing to move forward and improve. So we really appreciate our Patreon subscribers out there, and you can be a Patreon subscriber too, especially if you want to get in that mid-season draft. Go check out patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. That is it from us, and we will catch you next time.